Venezuelan government rejected a new interventionist plan hatched by the U.S. State Department, which insists on the imposition of a transitional government in the South American nation. For the 15th day in a row, thousands across Brazil have protested from their homes, banging pots and pans against President Jair Bolsonaro. A Chinese medical team has arrived in London to assist the United Kingdom in its fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. From the headquarters of Telesurrey English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, I'm Katrina Goss. The Venezuelan government this Tuesday rejected a new interventionist plan hatched by the U.S. State Department, which insists on the imposition of a transitional government in the South American nation. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo presented a so-called framework for a peaceful democratic transition in Venezuela, which once again calls for a transitional government in complete disregard of the already existing legitimate and democratically elected government of President Nicolas Maduro. Pompeo stressed that U.S. sanctions against Venezuela will remain in effect and increase until such demands are met. In response, Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreza condemned the latest move and underlined that Venezuela is a sovereign country that makes its own decisions without foreign interference. The latest State Department plan comes after years of failed attempts by the US and a minority extremist sector of the Venezuelan opposition to topple the Maduro government. And the Venezuelan Foreign Minister reiterated that President Nicolas Maduro was democratically elected in 2018.
President Trump and his administration have an obsession with accomplishing their will here and resuming control over Venezuelan oil, Venezuelan resources, resuming their grip on power in Venezuela, which was in their hands until the year 1999. But we do what the Venezuelan people say, not what President Trump says. If one day they decide to respect Venezuela, we will welcome that respect. We will respect them as we should and establish the best relations. Until then, the relations are of tension, of defense of our sovereignty and anti-imperialism, as it should be.
And Arreza warned that through the multiple attacks on Venezuela, the United States intends to seize the country's oil resources.
President Trump and his administration have an obsession with accomplishing their will here and resuming control over Venezuelan oil, Venezuelan resources, resuming their grip on power in Venezuela, which was in their hands until the year 1999. But we do what the Venezuelan people say, not what President Trump says. If one day they decide to respect Venezuela, we will welcome that respect. We will respect them as we should and establish the best relations. Until then, the relations are of tension, of defense of our sovereignty and anti-imperialism, as it should be.
And Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez condemned the latest U.S. plan against Venezuela and described it as another criminal move that threatens the peace and stability of the Americas. On his Twitter account, the Cuban Foreign Minister rejected the new plan for Venezuela presented by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, stressing that it only confirms U.S. neo-colonial intent in line with the Monroe Doctrine. He added that U.S. sanctions must be lifted without any precondition whatsoever. Justice of the Supreme Federal Court of Brazil, Marco Aurelio Melo, accepted a criminal complaint calling for the suspension of President Jair Bolsonaro from the post for 180 days. The justice forwarded the request to the Brazilian Prosecutor General's office after considering that the head of state has undertaken several actions that favour the spread of the novel coronavirus and put the country at risk. Melo ruled that the Prosecutor General's office should analyse a report on criminal offences presented against President Bolsonaro. The decision was made last Friday but wasn't made public until this Tuesday. The latest ruling joins other initiatives presented by several Workers' Party parliamentarians also calling for Bolsonaro's suspension. Should the prosecutor's office decide the complaint has merit to open an investigation, it will be passed to the Chamber of Deputies. And on the anniversary of the 1964 Brazilian military coup, President Jair Bolsonaro said he was going to address the nation this evening. In response, Brazilians across the country conducted the largest demonstration of people banging pots and pans from their windows and balconies to denounce Bolsonaro after 2 weeks of uninterrupted daily protests. On this occasion, the Brazilian population not only expressed condemnation of Bolsonaro's handling of the novel coronavirus pandemic, but also of his publicly declared admiration for the military dictatorship. Messages projected on buildings in Sao Paulo as part of the protests read, "To idolize torture is to repeat the mistakes of the past." Citizens of the Department of Beni in the northeast of Bolivia have challenged a total lockdown in the country to demand food promised by the central government, in addition to greater health security in the face of the novel coronavirus pandemic. Residents of the town of Riberalta mobilized this Tuesday to demand the immediate delivery of the benefits and food promised to face the health emergency. They also called for security measures to stop the arrivals of vehicles and people from other departments of the country, as so far Beni is the only Bolivian department where no coronavirus cases have been confirmed. The protests come after the central government announced 2 weeks ago the distribution of a payment of $70 for each primary school student and a free basket of basic goods worth more than $50 for 1.5 million families. Mexico has declared a national public health emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic and issued stricter measures aimed at containing the fast-spreading virus. The new measures to fight the COVID-19 virus include a reduction in the maximum number of people allowed to gather in a single space to 50 and an extension of a previously announced suspension of non-essential activities. Private and social events are also suspended. Schools had already closed and will now remain closed for a further month. Several states had already declared emergencies and issued stay-at-home orders, including Chihuahua, in advance of a federal decree. The national emergency came as Mexico reported over 1,000 confirmed cases of the novel coronavirus and 28 deaths. Puerto Rico saw its largest single-day increase in COVID-19 cases, a sign that testing is ramping up, but also that the virus is spreading amid some of the most restrictive measures of any United States territory. On Monday, the Puerto Rican Health Department said public and private labs had detected 47 new cases and that another patient had died. The island now has over 170 cases of the novel coronavirus and has registered 6 deaths due to COVID-19. The latest fatality was a 68-year-old man who had close contact with a family member who had travelled to New York, according to the Health Department. The Dominican Republic has been under a nationwide curfew from 5 p.m. to 6 a.m. for the past 11 days to attempt to stem the spread of the COVID-19 virus. The country has reported over 1,000 cases and over 50 fatalities. Our correspondent Daisy Toussaint brings us the latest on the situation there.
Greetings to you in the studio and to all our viewers. Well, 11 days after the implementation of the curfew in the Dominican Republic, and according to the National Police report this Tuesday, more than 19,000 people have been detained for non-compliance with the measures imposed by the government on March 20 to prevent the spread of the coronavirus in the country. The Dominican Medical College and 55 medical specialty societies requested that the President of the Republic urgently declare the country in a state of total mandatory quarantine for at least 14 days. Later, fake news circulated that the government was about to approve that measure today, Tuesday, which sparked alarm and saw people rush out yesterday morning, crowding markets and banks from the early morning, which led the Minister of the Presidency to make a statement denying that the government was to establish the total quarantine and stressing that those spreading false news with the aim of creating panic in the population will be brought to justice. In the press release number 12 offered today by the Ministry of Public Health, it was confirmed that the number of coronavirus cases in the country had risen to 1,109 and 51 people have died. The health minister said that of the confirmed cases, 127 are in hospital isolation, 926 are isolated in their homes, and 5 have recovered and been discharged from hospital. Meanwhile, despite the health crisis that the country is facing, the presidential elections are planned for May 17th. In fact, the Central Electoral Board delivered the electoral calendar yesterday to political parties, and from today the preparations are beginning with the delivery of the preliminary electoral register. This is all the information we have for the moment. Back to you in this.
Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness, has announced additional measures to contain the anticipated spike in novel coronavirus cases, including an island-wide curfew starting on April 1st. Jamaica has confirmed 36 COVID-19 cases and 1 death so far.
Having gone 20 days since our first case, and having seen that our increase relative to other countries of similar size has been relatively low, we are expecting that there will be a rise, in fact a significant rise, in the number of infections that have been confirmed. Having regard to that, the Cabinet carefully considered weighing the economic impact of these measures, but we decided, as we have always done, that the public health is of greater importance. And therefore, I'm announcing today that effective 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. for 7 days, starting on April the 1st, there will be an all-island curfew.
We've got more stories coming up after this short break, so don't go away. Welcome back. Faced with criticisms from Congress members and health professionals over his handling of the pandemic, US President Donald Trump said that if his administration managed to keep the death toll to 100,000, it would have done a very good job. Various media outlets are pointing to a significant drop in Trump's optimism, claiming that it responds to pressure from experts in the field. However, his latest statements have drawn widespread criticism in Congress, where opposition leaders have laid the blame for avoidable COVID-19 related deaths with the president. Trump recently appeared to bend to pressure from experts by extending the closure of the nation's borders until the end of April, as well as the federal guidelines urging social distancing. And the number of COVID-19 deaths in the United States has now surpassed 3,000. More than half of Americans have been ordered to stay home, but health officials warn that the virus could kill around 200,000 people in the United States, even if all the necessary measures are adopted. There are more than 160,000 confirmed cases in the US, almost double the number announced by China. Meanwhile, the confirmed number of infections worldwide continues to grow, reaching 800,000 on Tuesday. A Chinese medical team arrived in London to assist the United Kingdom in its fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. The 15-member team from East China's Shandong province includes 6 medical experts specializing in disease prevention and control, traditional Chinese medicine and Western medicine, as well as psychological counseling. The team brought medical supplies which will be donated to local hospitals and Chinese communities. According to Chinese diplomats, they will also provide health consultancy to Chinese communities in the UK, including meeting with business representatives and students in a bid to help Chinese nationals stay safe during the pandemic. Britain's Cabinet Minister Michael Gove said on Tuesday that the UK government was finding it hard to secure supplies of specific chemicals to make sure COVID-19 tests are reliable, as the government's testing strategy came under attack. Speaking at a daily coronavirus briefing, Gove said the government must go further and faster in rolling out coronavirus tests for healthcare workers and others. There's been widespread criticism of a lack of tests for National Health Service workers exposed to the virus. Gove also said that 8,000 ventilators would be deployed to hospitals, but government officials confirmed that only 30 new UK manufactured ventilators would arrive this weekend, and the country still needs more. The Cabinet Minister stressed there were some signs social distancing was flattening the curve of the virus, but warned that now was not the time to start relaxing the restrictions. The UK has been on lockdown for more than a week, with people only allowed to leave their homes to buy food, exercise, or to go to work in essential sectors.
143,186 people have now been tested for the virus. Of those, 25,150 have tested positive. And sadly, yesterday we recorded the highest single increase in the number of deaths as a result of COVID-19. 381 people died, meaning that of those hospitalized in the UK, the number who have passed away now totals 1,789.
China will start reporting on asymptomatic coronavirus cases that have been confirmed in the mainland from April 1st, an official from the National Health Commission stated on Tuesday. All asymptomatic virus cases will be centrally quarantined for 14 days. The existence of a substantial but unknown number of coronavirus carriers displaying no symptoms has raised concerns among the Chinese public that people could still be spreading the virus without knowing they are sick.
There are currently 2,161 confirmed cases, including 528 critical cases and 183 suspected cases. The overall confirmed cases on the mainland had reached 81,518. 76,052 patients had been discharged after recovery, and 3,305 people died of the disease.
The COVID-19 death rate in Germany, currently 4%, will increase in the coming days according to the Robert Koch Institute. According to the president of the institute responsible for disease control and prevention, the low number of victims in Germany is thanks to the fact that the disease was identified at a very early moment and many samples were examined. 500,000 COVID-19 tests are being carried out per week in Germany. According to the official, there is no country in the world that has as many places in intensive care for artificial respiration as in Germany, although this is not enough to contain the epidemic.